Retail returns. There are many different types of retailers, which means there are great diversity in the types of products that are sold, anything from clothes and office supplies to shipping services. Each of these retailers uses different business practices, but almost all allow for sales returns and some allow for sales allowances. Policies depend on the type of store, the location, and the products. And many companies offer return policies to keep customer satisfaction ratings high and in return, which keeps customers coming back. In an industry survey, UPS in 2012 found 63% of customers surveyed said that they looked up for the return policy prior to making a purchase, and 62% of online shoppers have returned a product purchased online. Having an easy return policy will enhance the customer experience. An automatic refund is also very important in ensuring a good returns experience. Based on the evidence, we propose that you continue with online returns and quick return policies. This was a study done on just the efficiency of how returns bring people back when they're easier. The company I chose was UPS. I chose to go into their store location and find out about some of their returns. They sell a lot of shipping supplies, office supplies, and shipping services and boxes. Some returns are available. Returns are only accepted for boxes they offer to sell, and in that their policy is you must bring back the receipt and the box in good condition. So essentially it is up to the employee that is working when you bring in your return if they choose to accept the return, if they think the box is in good condition or not. They also offer shipping services. They are a franchise store, so those shipping services partly go exactly to UPS when they pick up the package. These returns are more complicated and lengthy. It mostly happens when an item is not delivered in time, and then you would file a claim, but it does take longer to process, but those returns are allowed and they are more cut and dry than the box return policy. In my group discussion, many people chose different boutiques or women's clothing or just clothing in general, different areas. The UPS store I chose, their policies seem more strict. They rarely allow returns, and even then it is only on a few items, one or two. One of the stores someone in my discussion chose was called Island Gypsy. It's in New Jersey's women boutique. It has a somewhat stricter policy where they have a 14-day return period, unworn, unwashed tags attached. After 14 days, you can receive store credit, so it keeps your money within the store, and they absolutely do not give cash back if you paid in cash at the time. So it's just an evolution of how they're somewhat strict, but they still do allow returns. And in this case, it is women's clothing, so all their items are eligible to be returned. Another shopping store someone in my discussion chose was the Ralph Lauren factory store. It's an outlet. They sell clothes that didn't sell originally in stores, so they're brought to the outlet for a cheaper price. To be returned there, the person just has to have the receipt and the original tag, but any time frame will do. It could be like 6 months later, as long as the tag is still attached with the receipt, you'd be able to return it. This is more so they just want to get the clothes out of the door. So they have a very lenient policy. There was a study focusing on the leniency of return policies when it comes to online shopping, and it did show it was more beneficial to offer greater leniency when creating return policies because it continues to bring people back. Lenient return policies appear to offer several benefits that may be contrary to managerial intuition and practice. Greater lenience appears to increase order rates by reducing the amount of conflict in the decision and order and creating higher quality expectations. In my discussion, I found sales allowances seem to be less popular and they come up less. Sales allowances are when a customer is allowed to keep a merchandise when they're unhappy in return for partial credit of a refund. Instead of going through the full return process and returning the whole item, they would just receive a small credit back. This definition is on page 151 in the Financial and Managerial Accounting 8th edition book, the textbook we're using for class. So the store I chose, the UPS store, allows for sale allowances on wide format printing, essentially posters. And when small mistakes are made, like the item being slightly off color, they will give a certain percentage off, usually not that high, at most a 15% discount. Because the item is still made, the person would still in contract to purchase it. It's more on a good faith on their part that the item wasn't as perfect as it needed to be. So they allowed for a small discount. In my discussion, I noticed many stores did not allow sales discounts, mostly because it was clothing items. And many of these clothing items are shipped to the store to be put out for display and sold. So when an item comes in looking bad or damaged, it's just not even put out for the option for a customer to purchase it. So there would be no sales allowance because there's not even an item damaged to negotiate about having a partial refund on it. Another one in the discussion was one of the stores, the Ralph Lauren factory store, again, because it is an outlet. It is up to each manager on their sales allowance. Sometimes a customer will say they have a coupon, they aren't able to find it in time, but the person on the cash register will still honor that coupon, especially if the line is very long, just to keep things flowing, keep customer satisfaction up. From my own research of a store and from the group discussion, it seems like abuse of sales allowances are low because they are very rarely offered. Specifically at the UPS store, sales allowances are done on a case-by-case basis, so it's easier for the owner to judge when they are needed. And if the customer appears to be abusing these policies, the owner will simply not offer the sales allowance anymore. Abuse of return policies seem to vary from store to store depending on their merchandise and how strict the original policy is. Abuse of return policies appear to happen more than abuse of sales allowances. The stricter the policy, the return policy, the less room for abuse there is. Again, the store I looked at only allows returns on boxes, and since they are strict on the condition that it must be in and for the return to be eligible, there is little to no abuse of this policy because there is just not room for it to be abused. In the discussion, it was mentioned one store experiences many returns, and since the policy is so lax, sometimes people will come back the next day, return an item, and repurchase it because they found a coupon. So these stores are widely different. It's more an outlet store. They're just trying to get items out of the door and sold for something. Whereas my store is more focused on profit, and they are a franchise, so they have fees they have to pay. So they're always focused on making the most of their profit. The main protection for the stores from people abusing their sales return policies is keeping stricter policies and allowing and following through with them. When the policy is posted and followed, there is little room for customers to abuse the policy. Another journal article supporting the idea of strict return policies lists the many examples of abuse of the return policies and how they affect the business. Clearly, returns cause the retailer to lose the profit margin earned on the original sale. The monetary drain, however, does not end there. Additional losses accrue when you factor in the time employees spend processing returns, evaluating the item's resale potential, and restocking the returns. So when a customer comes in for a return, there's often these hidden costs that the retailer is losing based on that return, not just solely the cost of the item. A consumer-based authorization system can also deter potential fraudulent returns. Once return abusers realize that the retailer would not tolerate abuse or fraudulent return behavior, they will search for a softer target. And this is basically, again, saying that the stricter the policy and when it's followed through, people realize there's a strict policy and they will stop going to that returns to that store, such as wearing an item there's a 30-day return period. You wear it with the tags and keep the receipt for 29 days and bring it back to return. The return would still be honored because you have all of the items necessary for it. But essentially that return policy is being abused because people are keeping up to the latest date and just trading it in for something new, whereas stricter policies will not allow for room for that.